Okay, cool. So yeah, I'm Harry, and I'm from 1225. We started our business a little over a year ago, well, like 14 months ago now. And I was just saying, we did a podcast after 12 months talking about the 9 things we wish we knew before we started. And I've turned it into a 20-minute talk, so let's see how it goes. But it does have the potential to be quite generic. Like when you see these like lessons we learned things, most of the lessons tend to be things that you've heard before, read before, those kind of things. So we're going to try and avoid those as much as possible to make sure it's not surface level lessons that are just going to be a mask for telling you how wonderful I believe we are. Don't know how that got there. Right, so let's make this really, really specific. On the 12th of July, 2024, we turned 1. Now, there's something really embarrassing about this photo, which is I'm actually standing on my tiptoes in this photo, and I'm still by far the shortest person in the team. Yeah, I tried to tell them there was like a slope, but it's not. I'm just very, very small. And whenever anybody asked us how it was going over the first 12 months, like if it was my dad or anybody who like I don't see, like a distant relative, sometimes they would call and say, how's business going? And you'd give one of these answers, right? Which is like, oh, it's really busy. I can't complain. It's really good to be busy. I'm so happy about it. And a very quick side note, like this guy isn't me. When I was putting these slides together, Alina, my partner, came in and was like, oh, I didn't know you were using baby photos in this talk. Not me. That is a meme. And like another thing that we get quite often is like we'd go, I can't believe we haven't done this sooner. All the kind of like the very generic things about you say when you first start a business. Now, most of it is true. Like it is very true that, I mean, we're all either freelancers or business owners here that like we probably never want to go back to employment. I can't imagine having a boss again, being told what to do. Even today, I was saying to Penny, getting here for like 10 past 9 was a stretch. Like I am very much a get to the office 10:30 kind of person. And you get the point, right? Like we're trying to not make this surface level advice. So by all accounts, or almost all accounts, it's been going really well. So we made, after all said and done and the tax man took all of our money, we made about 50K in profit at the end of the first year, which was really nice. We hired 2 people, again, all of them taller than me, which is fantastic. We still have wives and partners, which is good. No one has left us. It would have been very easy to. I'm sure I was horrible to live with for at least the first 6 months. And then on a touching note, I get to work with some of my closest friends every day. I can be quite annoying to work with, so that was just a little nod to them that they stuck with us for 12 months. But if I'm being honest, like now we finished those 12 months, we're in like month 14, 15, I'm really tired. Like it's been a really long road to get to where we are now. And like we're still nowhere near where we want to be. But there was a bunch of stuff I wish we had done in the build up to those first 12 months and after those 12 months now that we should have done so much sooner, and our lives would have been so much easier than they are now. And I'm definitely going to take a holiday at some point. So let's get into some of these lessons then. So the first one, like this is so obvious. We talk about it at 1225 all of the time. And if you're connected to me on LinkedIn or my co-founder Brendan, you've probably seen us talk about this quite a lot. But we launched 1225 on the 12th of July, 2023 at 12:27. We didn't realize that it would take about 3 or 4 minutes to upload the launch video onto LinkedIn when we pressed the go button. So like, obviously we had no clients at this time. So we were just sat in the office all morning like, oh, let's wait till 12:25. And we got there, pressed the button, and then just slowly uploaded for like 2 minutes. And it was soul destroying. So our first mistake was we launched the company at the wrong time. But when we did launch, nothing happened. Like we thought people would see this launch video and be like, yeah, this is great. We definitely want to work with you. Like loads of people saw the launch video and they told us how great it was and you know that it was really nice to see us going out to do our own thing. But nobody wanted to come and work with us. And that was if I'm honest, a bit of a hit to the ego. We'd spent 12 years in marketing agencies up until that point. We had like pretty good networks of people. We thought a couple would have been like, yes, let's go, we're ready to go straight away. And that wasn't the case. And since launching, we realized that the problem was we hadn't done any of this. We hadn't been building our personal brand, either in person or online, at all for those 10 years. No one knew who we were apart from the people that we've been working with. But the problem is that people we were working with were already working with someone because they've been working with us. So we needed to develop brands, or at least, get our faces out there somewhat. And there's some really quick things that I would say, which is everyone has a podcast, but they make total sense. Like, we do not look at the listenership of our podcast at all. Like, it's great if it gets views and likes and all that sort of stuff. But really, it's just a great opportunity for us to sit down and talk to people that we want to talk to. Like, everyone loves talking about themselves. We've never had a podcast guest of any stature, any size, say no to us. Like, we've interviewed people that have just had investment from the previously mentioned Stephen Bartlett, for example. Everyone is really happy to come on and talk. In fact, Penny, that's one of the ways that we got a lot closer in terms of working relationships, is you came on our podcast. So if you don't have one, it's a great way of just networking, but you also get some free content from it. This is Brendan. He hates cameras. He hates people looking at him. He describes it as a necessary evil. We were saying earlier as well that he's very much the type of person that as soon as the camera gets turned on, he turns into like Joey in Friends when he's trying to learn French. Like, the words just don't come out in the right order. But we've had to push through that. And if I'm looking back now over the first 12 months, every big win that we have had has been because of our personal brand in some way. It's not even people engaging with it. We've had people that we haven't spoken to in 3-4 years message us randomly out of the blue saying, I've seen your podcasts, I've seen a couple of your LinkedIn posts, let's have a conversation. And then from there, we've been working with them. So if you're not already building a personal brand, probably video content is the way to do it. Like, get started straight away. And you're even doing some videos today if anybody wants to get started. But what I would say is, while we didn't have people queuing up to get us through, that first milestone of whatever revenue target we had, we did have to rely on our network incredibly heavily. And your network is absolutely everything when you get started, but as you grow as well. I mean, we cobbled together our website. Well, pretty much everything that we did before launch was borrowed or stolen from somebody in our network. Like, even to the point that I had my stepdad sneaking bins out of his office to get it into our office, even though they'd be like a tenner. We just didn't want to pay for anything at all. So your network is absolutely everything. And that's what got us through this time here. We had a couple of people reach out and say, okay, I've seen your stuff. We worked together 3-4 years ago. Let's give it a go. And another big thing that I would say is we decided to shorten our contract lengths in the early days. So anybody that signed up to 1225 in the first 6 to 9 months was just put on a 30-day rolling contract. We were confident in what we were doing, and it got over that milestone of having to commit to like a new company for 12, 18 months. And that really helped as well, because we'd have these people who used to work with us, kind of liked us, but they still had that big risk of taking a 2-person company to their boss and saying, we want to move away from this 50, 60-person stable agency to these guys. But if we do like a 30-day rolling contract, all that risk is removed. But you need to nurture these relationships, and this is something that, like, hands up, like, I'm terrible at. Like, people can message me, and I'll look at the message, I'll stare at it and go, oh yeah, I need to reply to that. And then I'll just go off and do something else and forget about it. And before you know it, it's been 3-4 days before I've messaged someone back. Or one of the things that I complain a lot about to one of my friends is, I want to send that message, and they're like, that's a task checked off. But then he replies straight away again, and then it's back on me. So I am terrible at nurturing relationships. And I don't even mean that in like a businessy way, right? Like, people work with people, people trust people. But really, to build friendships, to build relationships, there has to be some reciprocal value sharing that doesn't always happen. So yeah, we were terrible at this. And even now, Brendan will call me on a Monday and be like, have you replied to everybody that messaged you last week? And most of the time, the answer is no. Yeah, this one is probably every bad decision we made in the first 12 months is because we were on some kind of hunt for validation. We both had very well-paying jobs that were very secure jobs. We could do all the things that people talk about when they start a business normally, right? They'd be like, oh, if I start a business, then maybe I'll get some money and I can go on holiday whenever I want, or I can travel whenever I want, or I'll be able to do this thing or that thing. Like, we had jobs that let us do that, and then we took the plunge, and now we don't do any of that. Like, I haven't been on holiday for almost 2 years now. But because of that, we were hunting for validation. We were hunting for people to tell us, either we were doing the right thing or we'd made the right decision or they liked what we were doing. So quite often, we would sit down around a very small table because we couldn't afford much and be like, okay, is this something that we should do? And normally the decision would be made based on, would other people think this is a good idea or would they tell us good things? It was really, really bad, all the way through to, this is a bad example, but I'm going to go with it, which is we applied for a grant from the BIPC. I think they may even work out of here, so I shouldn't slag them off too much. But the only reason we applied for that in the first place is because Brendan wanted the little badge that you can get and put on your website as a form of validation to say, yes, a government-funded institution believes in us as well. So every decision that we made for at least 9 months was because we're in the hunt for validation. And we spoke to this lady here, Camilla, on our podcast. She is a business coach, a life coach. She runs a company called 50/50 Coaching. One of the big light bulb moments for us is when she said, as soon as you become self-employed, you have to switch the way that you get validation. So when you're in employment, you're always getting external validation. At least if you're terrible at what you do, you probably don't. But if you're a fairly good employee, your boss or someone in that organization is going to be saying to you, hey, good job, or I really like that audit. That was a really good report that you did. As soon as you go out on your own, especially if you're on your own solo, you're not getting validation from anywhere. So you have to turn where you get that validation from external to internal. And I am still terrible at that, absolutely terrible. I've definitely moved away from making decisions in the hope of validation, but I will never ever pat myself on the back and go, yeah, you're doing well, or yeah, that was a good thing to do. So if you can, get ahead of that as soon as you see something like this. It's probably, for us, it was the first time we'd ever heard about the external and internal validation metrics. But if you're seeking that external validation, really try and move it the other way, because yeah, it's allowed us to make much clearer decisions. This is something that we've, again, spoken about quite a lot today, which is, I'm really tired. And the reason that I'm really, really tired is because, well, there's two reasons. But the main one is that I'm really, really tight. I hate spending money, and if I can, I will just claw all of the money and keep it for myself. And I don't mean trying to become rich. It's just we work so hard for these things that I don't like the idea of having to spend money to make our lives easier and things like that. I, for some reason, find nobility in the suffering sometimes. Yeah, if it's hard now, it's going to be better for us later. It's just not true. The first thing that we did, forced because I was very scared of getting the government coming our way, was about 3 months in, we get a letter and a massive VAT bill arrives. I mean, good. At least that probably means something's going well. I had no idea what to do with a VAT bill. I didn't know how to pay it. I don't know what it meant. Didn't really realize that that's what we were doing. So we had to get an accountant. And it was, I reckon, 200 quid a month for paying this accountant. Oh my God, life-changing. We don't have to think about bookkeeping, really. We don't have to think about invoices going out or money coming in. Once a month, they just send us a little email that says, all is good, the balance has gone up or it's gone down, and carry on. And that was the first real insight we had into the power of outsourcing or delegation. So like I said, I like to keep the money. But your time is a really expensive asset, especially if you're solo or a very small team. And recently, probably last week and a half, we got a VA for the first time. There's one here today as well. But life-changing. You were talking earlier about £10 jobs, for example. And it's those kind of things that take up so much time that it's easy to think you're being productive doing, but they're not the big things that you should be working on if you're trying to build your business at the same time. So some great examples are booking meetings, organizing food for those meetings. They were really good. We do a lot of filming days for clients at 1225. We would spend probably a day a week looking for set locations. We've been able to outsource that, and it's so easy. His name is Tan. He's based in the Philippines, but he's amazing. He will just send us an email and be like, okay, I found all of these in a 20-mile radius. Just select the one you want, go get it. And the cost the amount he cost versus the output is ridiculous, and it's transformed what we're doing to the point that like I'm actually finishing at like 4 or 5 o'clock now instead of 10 o'clock, and yeah, my dog is very happy about that. It means he gets to go for a walk when it's still light outside. So if you can, delegate or outsource everything. Like we're now trying to get to the point where we have a staff member for everything, we have a process for everything, or we're outsourcing it. And while it's, oh no. That'll do. Let's go here. Cool. All right. So virtual assistants are great. AI note-taking is huge as well. It's like a tenner, but I don't take notes. Never have. Not because I don't want to, but like I get so engaged in the conversation that's happening, or I'm so focused on making sure that I have a habit of saying things I shouldn't say. Like I'm really bad for just saying the first thing that comes into my head or making a joke. That I'm so engaged in that meeting, I forget to take notes or I forget what the actions are. Like a £10 a month AI tool solves all of those problems. And I'll talk later about my big problem with AI that I have had to overcome as a bit of a personal challenge. And again, quick side note, ginger bloke, not me either. Like just a lot of generic ginger people. So go at your own pace. So I mentioned earlier about, by almost all accounts in our first year, things were going incredibly well. The only person who didn't think that was me. Like, I had a really miserable 6 to 9 months. And the only reason it was incredibly miserable is because like, I'm friends with a lot of other agency owners, and they would talk about the growth that they were having in their like second year, third year, or their first year when they launched in like the COVID years, for example. Like they were the golden years to launch an agency. We should have just done it then. But I would compare myself to every other company, even if they were remotely similar to us. And I'd look at the growth that they were having and be like, well, we're not having that growth. Even though I know the reasons, I knew the reasons. Like we didn't really have a network, we had no personal brand, we were a brand new company. But I would look at anything and be like, nah, this isn't going well, this is really, really bad, everything is wrong. And even when we had our end of year meeting with our accountants, they sat us down and told us it went really well. And then I ranted at them for about 10 minutes about why it was really bad. So yeah, I am definitely the problem, as Taylor Swift would say. So one of the things that Camilla, who we mentioned in the podcast, mentioned earlier, she was on our podcast, she helped me realize is that you can take inspiration from competition, but don't compare yourself to them. Like that comparison, yeah, you have the phrase of like comparison being the thief of joy, but like it really is. Like that comparison ruined my life for 6 to 9 months, which again is why I referenced the fact that Alina, my fiance, hasn't left me, is more credit to her than me. I was terrible to live with. Don't be an idiot. So what I mean by this is like you have to take all the help you can get. And as I mentioned, I wanted to claw all of the money and keep it for ourselves. But I also didn't really want help. I like the idea of like suffering in the trenches, like very old school. And I found we had this like nobility problem, which is I would tell myself, like, I don't need AI, I'm going to do this the hard way, I'm going to do this the right way. Like, if I do all of this work myself, then it's going to be better than what a computer could generate. Terrible, terrible advice. Like, these things are so much more powerful than any of us. They have access to pretty much every word that has ever been written on the internet. And the light bulb moment for this was, so we do our podcast recordings every 2 weeks-ish, and for whatever reason, in the week of the podcast recordings, I hadn't done any prep. I was really busy, but we'd started to do prep. The level of the podcast was going up. And I just, in a panic on the day of filming, turned to ChatGPT and said, I have this guest coming on. Do you know who they are? It came back and said, yes, I do. And I was like, great. Now, in the style of this podcast, write some interview questions. It was done in probably 5 minutes, if that. And I'm not even joking. I changed 1 or 2 questions. Everything else was perfect. Or at least it was workable if it wasn't perfect. But that took a job that would normally take me 2.5, 3 hours to 15 minutes. And then it comes through to like email writing, meeting scheduling. You were talking earlier about bookkeeping, for example, and how it can match up receipts based on like learned patterns. There is no noble factors at play to do things the hard way. Like if you can get help, if you can use machines, if you can use people, if you can get the help of family, friends, whatever it may be, like embrace it. Don't spend months suffering in the trenches like I was. Celebrate everything. Like, I celebrate absolutely nothing. Like, Brendan shouts at me all the time. We'll get a client contract signed. He'll be bouncing up and down the corridor celebrating, and I'm like, great, on to the next one, on to the next target. But then I heard this guy, George Mack, on a podcast say about, like, we don't know how to celebrate anything anymore. Like, we have 21st birthday, 30th birthday, 40th, but in between there, we don't really celebrate anything unless there's like a big life milestone. Maybe you get married, or you have a baby, whatever it may be, or in my mum's case, she probably celebrated when she got divorced, who knows? But like, we don't always have these things to celebrate. But when we're business owners, there are a ton of things that we should be celebrating, even those small wins. You sign a client, you finish a project. I'm sure there are nightmare projects for some people where everything is going wrong. Like, that happens, definitely happens. But when you've got that and you've delivered it and it's done, you can celebrate then as well. So I think finding reasons to celebrate is something that we didn't do enough within the first year. So now, pretty much every Friday, we'll sit down around the table and just talk about, like, what went well this week, and we'll celebrate them in some way. And if it's gone really well, we'll go to the pub. But yeah, we don't know how to celebrate, and we need to learn to celebrate more. See? Go to the pub. Right, so on a serious note, I probably would have given up at about month 9, 10 if I didn't have a coach. It took me a long time to get on board with this. Like, I had a coach in pretty much every other area of life. I love golf. I'm terrible at it, but I love it. I've got a golf coach. I have a personal trainer to help me stay motivated at the gym. This is embarrassing. So in COVID, like, gaming became a big thing again, right? And I hadn't picked up a PlayStation controller for years. I shouldn't say this. I paid a kid that I met on the internet to teach me how to play Call of Duty again. But like, I had coaches for like everything, but when it came to business, I didn't. And then I found this guy. My old boss, Matt, offered to take me for a drink. And I was just telling him all the things that were frustrating me, mainly ranting about Brendan, which I shouldn't say on camera, but Brendan, I'm sorry. About like, oh, he works this way, I work that way. And all he said to us was, just go to the pub, have a conversation, like, just talk about business, talk about things that are happening in today. Like, ask yourself about each other's lives, what's happening, what's frustrating you, those kind of things. So now, the first Friday of every month, we go to the pub. Like, that is in the diary, it is a non-negotiable, apart from last month, because Brendan went on holiday and didn't invite me. But just get out of the day-to-day, do something different, and try to focus on yourself, which isn't always the same as focusing on the business. Like, it can be really hard to do so, especially if you work from home. There's no separation at all. But find a way to get that separation. And like, I've spoken to people who do like self-care days where they'll just go to the spa once a month, whatever it may be, just to get out and think about what's going well, what's terrible, what are the things that I can improve upon. But find a coach and work on yourself, and your business is going to be better for it. We'll go this way. And this is the one that exposed probably our biggest flaws. So when we met Penny for the first time, Brendan and I were stood in the corner like this at a market meetup, not wanting to speak to anybody. Like, we are so introverted, it is unbelievable. Like, I know it's hard to believe because I'm like standing in front of people now, but I'll probably go and sleep after this. Like, it's taking a lot of energy for me to be stood here doing this. I am so introverted. And we suck at networking. Like, oh, we are so bad. Like, even today, I'm sat on a table with people I don't know. I've just been staring at my laptop like, oh, please don't ask me questions. Like, I am so terrible at human interaction. Like, how I ever convinced anybody to marry me is, I have no idea. But we're terrible at it. But this exposed like a big problem about there are so many different ways that you can sell depending on what business you have. So, a bit random, but we have a company that it's like a little side project for us, and it sells functional mushroom supplements. So, like, if you want like lion's mane mushroom to help increase like cognitive function, for example, like, let me know, I've got some. But that type of sales is unbelievable. Someone comes on your website, put in their card details, leave again, and I never have to speak to anybody. Like, that is where I should have started a business. An agency is all around people. Like, you have to network, you have to meet people, you have to sell to people, then you have to get on calls with people, you have to do client management, you have to account manage, you have to meet new people. All of the time, the entire business of an agency is focused around people. And I wish we had just sat down before we started and said, what type of sales are we actually going to be good at? We are not good at agency sales. That's why our first hire into the team was someone who was good at that, someone who could be our extroverted face and go out to these events and talk to people and, speak to complete strangers, because Brennan and I can't. But yeah, if I had my time again, looking back 14, 15 months ago, having a conversation with ourselves, like a real honest conversation around what type of sales are we actually good at, I can't imagine 1225 would exist. Like, I'm really glad it does, but I had to get massively out of my comfort zone to do this. I have OCD, and I hate odd numbers, so I never should have titled this talk 9 Things That We Learned, because 9 is an odd number, and I hate them, to the point that Alina and I have had huge fights when she leaves the TV on volume 13. Why would you do that? Oh. And she always sets the cruise control on the car to 21 mile an hour and stuff. I hate odd numbers. So here's number 10, go on holiday. I am so unbelievably tired. I am so fatigued sometimes, and I have definitely made more mistakes in the last month than ever before. And that's because I'm not taking a break. And it can be really hard to do. Penny, I'm sure I heard you say earlier that you haven't been on holiday for a long time and you've just booked one for next year or whenever it is. But take time off. It's going to be okay. Nothing's going to break. And even if it does, you'll probably be on a beach and not care about it anyway. So yeah, I really wish I had gone on holiday more or had been forced on holiday more. So yeah, they are the 9 plus 1, so 10 things that we wish we knew before we started 1225 14 months ago. And that is it. We are done.